guys, I'm heading out today to harvest my garlic. Now we're in zone 3, so I usually harvest my garlic in August sometime, and then I'll replant it towards the end of September probably. And I am doing it today because we're supposed to get a lot of rain tomorrow, so I decided, you know what, let's get it out of the ground, start the curing process. I planted about 50 cloves of garlic last fall, and each clove turns into 4 or 5 if all things go well. I planted a Russian red variety and it grows really well here, and then I mulched it heavily with straw. In the spring when the plants start coming up, I don't remove the mulch. When researching, there were two different opinions regarding this, but I just left the straw because I know it keeps in the moisture, and they've been doing really well the past 2 years. Last year I was in the midst of morning sickness when I planted my garlic, so I pretty much threw them in the ground. You can go as late as early October and it will still be fine in our zone. And so we have a smokehouse that my husband made, and it only gets used about once a year, so it turns out to be the perfect spot to dry garlic. Some of these are really small, but for the most part we have very good looking garlic. And I will let these dry for 2 to 4 weeks. When we first purchased our milk cow in April of 2024, our plan was to build a barn. She didn't have her calf in July like we were expecting. We pushed that project forward, but this year we are building a barn, and it's been so exciting. My husband is doing the main building himself. We did start off with a cement pad that we hired out. First 2 walls are almost done, and if you'll follow along, I'll share with you as the barn goes up. It's very exciting for us. It's a little bit bright outside, but I figured I'd sit down a little bit today and share our homestead story starting from the beginning. My husband and I both grew up in rural communities. We both grew up on small farms where having a vegetable garden was very common. I don't think my mom ever did not have a vegetable garden that I can remember growing up. Just seemed natural that we would as well. We did start our married life off in a small town, but once we got our own 10 acres, growing a garden, planting a garden was one of the first things that was on the priority list. In 2015, we purchased our first 10 acres. It was a bare plot of land. Thankfully, it was mostly open, so we didn't have to deal with trees. But we set up our own home. We purchased a mobile home and started building our homestead from scratch. We started by planting fruit trees. We created a huge garden. We built fences, we built shelters, and a lot of that was my husband doing all the handiwork. I really love gardening and growing food and preserving food and all of that, so that was my department. But together we've built some amazing things. In 2022, we put our place up for sale and decided if it was God's will it would sell, and it did. And we moved quite a bit further south, still in the same province but just further south, and started almost from scratch. The property that we purchased did have a house. It had an old overrun garden full with weeds. By the looks of it, it hadn't been tended to for many, many years. There wasn't a whole lot of infrastructure on the place, for lack of a better word. There was the house, there was a garage, and 2 small sheds. There were no barns, no fences. The garden was a lot smaller than I needed, and there was 1 crab apple tree, and that was the only fruit that was on that property. And it wasn't a new property, it hadn't been the priority of the previous owners to plant food. And that's one of the main things that's important to us, is planting trees that will produce food for our family. Vegetable garden is very important, but then I also love having those perennial trees and things like asparagus that come back every year that you don't need to tend to. That just makes it a lot less work, and it just keeps on giving. It's the gift that keeps on giving. It's 2025 now, and while we have gotten a lot of things accomplished on this place, we still have a lot more to do, and one of those things is the barn build. We wanted to build a barn last summer, but it got pushed aside. Was not a priority. We could make it work with the way things were. The first summer we lived here, we converted an old shed to a chicken coop. We've had layers for several years now. We've also raised meat birds for close to 9 years in a row. We lost a lot of meat birds this year. More than 75% of our meat birds died, and it was a really disheartening and discouraging year for raising animals for food. We lost a calf, a cow slipped her calf, and we're very small farmers, so one calf still seems like a lot. Then we also had a pig that had 19 babies, but we lost almost all of them. So this spring was one of those seasons where I really started to question why we were doing this. Why do we create all of this work and stress, and what is supposed to be a beautiful, wonderful thing turned out not to be? And partly it was overwhelmed. I felt a little bit burnt out. I felt a lot of burnout. And homesteading burnout is a real thing. It's a lot of work. You have to face the reality that you won't be able to do everything. You have to face the reality of sometimes there are seasons, there are times when you have to cut out stuff. And we had our 6th baby in March, and after that I felt very, very overwhelmed. But thankfully that's only for a time, and you have to realize that. That was one of those moments where I'm like, you know what, I cannot make cheese 2 times a week. So we need to get rid of this milk in another way. We purchased a bottle calf, which in a sense created more work than what I had thought it would be, but now it's better. There was a time where I was really starting to evaluate whether or not we really wanted to continue doing this. A huge reason why we do this is because of our kids. Growing up in a rural area is a great way to live. It's a great experience, even though some of my kids don't agree with me. They tend to think that milking a cow every morning isn't the most fun. But it teaches responsibility and self-discipline, and those are good things. Life is not a one-man society. We all contribute, and we all contribute to our family in one way or the other. Summer of 2023 was spent improving the garden plot. That summer my garden did very poorly. The soil was lacking a lot of nutrients. We did do soil testing, and we've since amended it quite a bit. Last year was a little bit better, but still not enough where I was really seeing the plants thrive. This year, thankfully, I feel like I've had a redemption garden this year. In 2023, because we moved away from family and friends, it was a little bit hard, and I told my husband, I am not sure I can live in a place where I cannot have a garden. But thankfully this year it's been doing really well, and I am so happy about that. The land that we purchased here had 50 acres that was wooded, that was forest, and we had another 40-ish acres that was open land, so it was in a hay field. So for the past 2 summers we've been haying, and this year as well. But we also my husband plowed up some of the field, and we have a crop of wheat growing this year that looks wonderful right now. It's starting to turn color now, and soon we'll have this golden wheat crop, and I'm really excited for that. I'm hoping to be able to harvest some of that for my own flour mill. It's not organic, but I know what went on it, so I'm hoping I can use some of it. The main project of summer of 2025 was building the barn. When you purchase a somewhat neglected property, there is a lot of work involved, and we have been making improvements slowly, adding on buildings. My husband has built quite a few shelters and fences for the cows. This year it's the barn. This barn will be a lot closer to the house than the others, so it'll be a lot easier to get there during the winter. Last winter was hard with having to milk quite a ways away from the house, especially during cold spells, but thankfully we made it through. And I've been wanting to document all the things that we do for many years now, and I decided, you know what? Even if it's messy, I'm still going to try. I'm excited to share. If you want to follow along with the barn build, if you're interested in other homesteading content, I am always excited to learn new things. So come along with me as we, I don't know, dive into this thing called life.